Okay, Dave, I've put this off for as long as possible because we're going to flip over to the round to the 13 through 24 in the Superflex rankings, and this is where my rankings kind of diverge from I think most other people's. This happens about round 3 or 4 in our redraft drafts as well. We're going to see some stuff people don't agree with. I'm looking forward to reading the chat and splashing some of those up there. But the first one, I think Will Levis is really hard in a Superflex league rookie only draft to rank. Because if he becomes a starting quarterback and gets to do that for 2 or 3 years, then he's worth at least a second round pick, and he might be worth a first round pick. It's hard to acquire Jared Goff or Geno Smith right now in a Superflex league without giving up a rookie first round pick. Do you think Will Levis gets a chance next year, or is he Malik Willis 2.0?
I don't think he's Malik Willis 2.0. I think he's better than Malik Willis. I think a long way on that won't be something we'll be privy to. The Titans will see him practice for a year, and they might even get him on the field if their season bottoms out a little early, and of course, if Ryan Tannehill gets hurt. If they like what they see, he's absolutely their replacement. And if not, the draft capital that they invested in him isn't so bad that they can't go out and find another quarterback in 2024 or later. I think your rationale makes sense in a super flex. It's way different in a 1 QB league. But in a super flex league, you've got to take that chance, especially if your quarterbacks are veteran guys right now. If you're starting the likes of Stafford, Rodgers, other older quarterbacks that are in the league, you need something that might be able to help you down the line. And Levis is a good blend of runner and thrower. His accuracy needs to get better. He's a lot like Anthony Richardson in that regard. And I think he has to build some confidence. And if he trusts his eyes a little bit more, I think he can be a pretty good quarterback in this league.
I asked you about that because I know Dan not on the Will Levis fan club page. Actually, I think he is. There's a big red X through his face. They all hate him. Dan, one thing that happened from May until now is the NFL's made it even more clear how little they value running backs. And it made me a little gun shy. Like the one big change is that wide receivers moved up my Dynasty rookie rankings. Running backs, particularly running backs who aren't going to be starting this year, and I don't think are going to be starting next year, moved down. So I want to look at these wide receivers, and then we will get to the running backs. But I've got Josh Downs, Marvin Mims, Tank Dell, Jaden Reed, Michael Wilson, all in this round 2 range. Who's your favorite of these guys? Is there anybody I'm way too high or way too low on?
I don't think there's anyone you're way too high or way too low on. You didn't mention one, Jalen Hyatt, who's having a really good camp so far with the Giants, but I mean, all these guys are, I'm sure. I would say who am I highest on of those that you may mention? It would probably be Marvin Mims. I talked a bit earlier. I really liked his production profile. I like the fact that he was, in my opinion, held back by bad quarterback play. I always like to look for those spots in fantasy football. Trying to kind of separate the player from the production via the quarterback. And overall, I think the landing spot's pretty solid there. I don't think it'll happen right away. It would probably be highest on Marvin Mims of that bunch, though. But as a sleeper, I do like Tank Dell a lot. I know he's got the size issues heading into the NFL, and people have already made the comparisons like, is this just Tavon Austin? But when you watch him on tape at Houston, he plays so much tougher than Tavon Austin ever did. He ran such a wide variety of routes. Like, he ran the full route tree there for a 5'8" receiver, which is so hard to imagine, and won on all 3 levels: the intermediate, the short passing game, and the vertical passing game. So he just felt like such a complete player on film, Tank Dell. And obviously has an opportunity to maybe be the number 1 there with that situation in Houston. So I'd say those are the 2 guys I have circled here, Mims and Dell.
Stroud loves him.
Yep.
They were connecting like in between day 1 and day 2 of the NFL draft. Stroud almost requested him. The Texans obliged. And there have been some great reports out of Houston. Where's Rashee Rice for you?
He will be on, and I realized I was catering to the YouTube audience more so than the podcast audience, because I do need to read off these names. For my 13 through 24, it goes Will Levis, Josh Downs, Marvin Mims, Tyjae Spears, Jalen Hyatt, Dalton Kincaid, Tank Dell, Kendry Miller, Jaden Reed, Roshan Johnson, Tank Bigsby, and Michael Wilson. I know we're going to have a Tank Bigsby conversation in just a second. Rashee Rice will be on the next page. Dave, I did not like Rashee Rice very much as a prospect. I have moved him up. He was at the end of round 3 for me before he landed in Kansas City. And I think it's positive that he's done a couple of good things in camp. but I don't really expect anything good this year. And I wasn't a big fan of him before the Chiefs drafted him. And it's not as if the Chiefs' history drafting wide receivers gives me very much confidence. But before we get to him, because we will, he will be on the next page. Josh Downs. Jasmine's been asking me about my 2023 projection for him because she thinks I've got him way too high. It's 52 catches, 645 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns for Downs this year. Not too high. I do think there's a sneaky chance, though, that he could eventually be the wide receiver 1 for the Colts.
He could. I don't think it's happening this year. He's going to end up being their slot receiver. When Anthony Richardson gets his act together as a thrower, or when Gardner Minshew starts, or when the Colts find a quarterback that can throw with pinpoint accuracy, that's when I would get very excited about Downs. I do not have him ranked as high as you do. I've got him, and remember, my rankings are 1 QB. He's 28th, so he's behind 3 quarterbacks already in my 1 QB ranks. Of course, he's going to be behind 4 in Superflex rankings. Would rather have Dell. Would rather have Jalen Hyatt. Of course, I'd rather have Rashee Rice, Heath.
What do you mean? Of course, you'd rather have Rashee Rice.
I think we view Rashee Rice very differently.
Okay, well, I know that one person I view very differently from Dan is Tank Bigsby. So I'm going to give Dan a chance to talk about why Tank Bigsby should have been on the first page as a round 1.
No,
but no, I seriously, what I talked about was I'm really not that excited about running backs who are not starters this year. I don't believe Travis Etienne's going anywhere. I think Bigsby's going to be the between the tackles guy. His upside the next couple of years is like a Jamal Williams type season where he scores a bunch of touchdowns. I don't think that's particularly likely when you have Trevor Lawrence. I think Etienne's probably on Jacksonville for the next 3 seasons because I would expect, being one of Trevor Lawrence's best friends, that he gets the 5th-year option. Do you think Tank Bigsby could become the starter on this Jacksonville offense and take Travis Etienne's job, Dan?
I do, honestly. I think, and starter is probably not the right word. I think he can earn a role that puts him in a timeshare with Travis Etienne potentially, not as early as this season. And I think part of it with Bigsby is I really liked his tape coming out. This was even before he landed in a spot that I love for him, Jacksonville. I'll explain that in a second. But one of the reasons I really liked watching Bigsby at Auburn was, number one, by far, that stop and start ability. He has a really good ability to kind of, and some people term it as bursts. It's fine, whatever you want to call it, but that ability to go from 0 to 60. And he combines that with a really low center of gravity and really low pad level. Where does that help him? Sure, in between the 20s, and he does break off some, chunk plays of the 15 range, but it really helps him in the red zone. He was an efficient red zone runner at Auburn. He's going to be an efficient red zone runner in the NFL. Travis Etienne is the total opposite of efficient red zone runner. So to me, the red zone role is going to happen as early as this season, and maybe as early as week 4, 5, 6. As far as the passing down role goes, we keep hearing Travis Etienne doing a lot of good things in camp as a receiver. Bigsby did some good things as a receiver. He's a little bit raw in that regard, but I know he's going to be a better pass protector than Travis Etienne. And ultimately, I know that how Doug Peterson is running that offense, he's not really looking to get the ball targeted to the running backs a lot. Not when he has Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, and Evan Ingram in the passing game, and an actual passer in Trevor Lawrence, one of the maybe 4 or 5 handful of them in the NFL who are willing and aggressive to throw hole shots over and over again and target the intermediate and vertical range of the field, despite maybe the coverage not showing that that's going to be an easy throw. So I just don't see upside for keeping Etienne long-term for the Jags. You're right. He's probably going to be there through the 5th-year option. It doesn't make much sense not to pick up the 5th-year option unless he gets injured again, though, Heath. And he's had some injuries, including a foot injury that, can be reoccurring. Liz Frank, it's not something you want. It's something that's really not only reoccurring, but if it is, but also debilitating. And sometimes players try to play through it. We saw Najee Harris not be 100% trying to play through it. We've seen a lot of players really see a sap in their production with that type of injury. I'm not saying that will happen again, but all I'm saying is he's a smaller back and he's more injury prone, I think, than some of these other backs. So I don't love Etienne long term, and obviously you know how I feel about Bigsby. So that's kind of my spiel there.
Right. Yeah. I just worry if the idea is Travis Etienne's likely to be on the team for the next 3 years.
I would say 2 for sure. The 5th-year option isn't guaranteed because it's expensive.